play, exposing their tech knocks, it's their turn to pay. It's time we stand together, taking your kids is no joke. I don't know who ever spoke, saying you can have our kids, but they are fired. We have rights that we stand on, time for CPS to be gone. Their services are no longer wanted. There is no reason for our kids to be taunted. Stay away, EPS. You have no authority. You hear is waxing war on me. Leave now before things get bad. My Constitution came from a revolution, defending the family as the foundation of our freedom. It gives us the way to beat them, so be aware, don't tread on me. I am the Punisher and follow my warning. I have the posse with me, so get to conforming. I'm all systems go, and we are ready for blast off. Hiding behind the night, giving EPS a hell of a fight. He's not backing down while they try and steal his freedom. So challenge his will and feel his wrath. Our bird is watching every move, making sure EPS doesn't screw the pooch. He knows the laws and enforces them. CPS, watch out, get off the porch, you can't come in. Danielle is fired up, looking for action. She hates CPS with a great passion. She'll fight all night if it needs be. Fighting APS is where she should be. Gunner is fierce with his knowledge, pretty good for a guy with no college. He was quiet until they ruffled his feathers. Now he's pissed and won't stop until it's over. We all have come together to fight this enemy. Together we will win for you and me. Our kids will come home, let the truth be known. EPS, you never had authority. This is more than important to me. Return our kids home. We don't deserve to be alone. We are all EPS punishers throughout the world. Our voices heard. We stand with a message. CPS needs to learn. Fuck around and find out. I'm so tired of living scared. I have to do something for me. I can't take the pressure, but I have to. No one will live my life for me. I need to know I'm better than this, that no one person who wronged me broke me. I was once a strong man, taking on everything in my path. When you took my daughter, you broke all I had. With that one action, you got my reaction. I threw my hands in the air, you quit. I try to pull myself together every day. I can't begin to rebuild because I'm so lost. I don't know how to get back the feeling, the one they stole that day. I was viewed as the protector, the strong and wise man to take control. I was put on a pedestal every day. When they took my daughter, they took all that away. I was the rock for my family. I made their dreams into reality. It was always up to me. Now my dreams are nightmares and I can't wake up. My wife laughs at me in silence. In front of her I went from a man to nothing. She feels bad for me and hates who I become. I am so weak right now, she won't leave. Ain't an epitome to her, no one she wants to be with. I don't blame her, why won't won't she run away? That's what I'm waiting for, to come home to an empty house with an open door. I am waiting for this. I am not what she thought I was. I couldn't stop this from happening. I couldn't keep my family safe. All I could do is watch it go away. I don't wait for tomorrow. I don't know what to do. I hurt so much inside. I'm sorry I didn't stand up that day. There's nothing worse than watching the ones who love you lose faith. They start to distance from you and then they go. They don't wanna be with one who is weak. They don't wanna be with anyone who caused their daughter to be gone. So I beg to you, God, please lift me up. Make me the man I need to be. I need my life to be saved. Please, let's get started. I have fight inside my body that no one has seen. I've got blood boiling in my veins to give me meaning. I need to take back the hearts of all of those I disappointed. Please, God, help me rewrite this story. I need your help. I need to be a man. Make me what I used to be, the one I see I can't stand. If I can reach to the sky and get a victory, all that'll be is me all alone. So please, Lord, give me the power, the strength I need to be what I need to be, to win it all back. Giant steps of confidence, a smile that shows true happiness. God, it has to be me or you. Please help me.
In the shadows where silence screams, the truth lies buried beneath the seams. CPS is out, hunting on the prowl. With the badge of justice, we'll take the vow. They come with badges, dressed in deceit, taking children, claiming it's all for the streets. We rise up, we won't be ignored. The CPS Punisher leads us toward the score. They come with badges, dressed in deceit, taking children, claiming it's all for the streets. But we rise up, we won't be ignored. The CPS Punisher leads us toward the score. Together we stand, for the truth we'll fight. CPS, hear a battle cry. No more corruption, we'll reach for the sky. A family torn, but we're ready to stand. For our children's rights, we'll take back our land. On the mic, with hearts on our sleeve, Herbert's got the law to help us believe. Expose the lies, peel back the mask. No more injustice, its truth we'll unmask. Stand together, this mission's ours alone. CPS, hear our battle cry. No more corruption, we'll reach for the sky. A family torn, but we're ready to stand. For our children's rights, we'll take back our land. Stand together, this mission's ours alone. CPS, hear our battle cry. No more corruption, we'll reach for the sky. A family torn, but we're ready to stand. For our children's rights, we'll take back our land. CPS, hear our battle cry. No more corruption, we'll reach for the sky. A family torn, but we're ready to stand. For our children's rights, we'll take back our land. Like a lion on the prowl,
Take back our kids, bring them home now. Constitution, strong blood won't lie. No more corruption, let freedom fly. Loud and on fire, won't back down. Keeping the faith here in this town. Apple pie dreams under a southern sky. American man with the fierce battle cry. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land.
Good evening. Who are we going to take and piss off this evening? Guys, welcome to Gunning for CPS. I'm your host, Gunner. Guys, we've got a great show for you guys tonight. Guys, share that we're live now. We tried to give a little bit of time for everybody to get a chance to get in here, play a few songs so the notifications go off. But guys, definitely check out these lives. You're not going to want to miss as this show changes, and I guarantee you it will, that it will get national news, that everybody will be coming and saying, we've got to watch that show, or this is where it began. You guys can be a part of that early part. I know I can't explain anything else to you right now, but guys, trust me, hang on. Guys, we got a special show for you guys. Tonight, we're going to go down the mental health, the psychology, as we do every other week, and how it ties together with CPS and how this organization has formed, and what it has done to the family and has done to us individually, psychologically, because this is psychological warfare. Guys, I want you to take and welcome once again. That's right, my beautiful wife, Sharon. Sharon has a degree in psychology and early childhood development and actively is raising a child with what we would call special needs or on the spectrum of autism, to know that there's a special niche for these people. I don't think a lot of people understand they're not normal kids, are they?
No, they're not. Although, I mean, what is normal? Can you define normal? I can't define normal.
Thank you. Well, how do you feel that now some of this that's coming out, and we're going to talk about some of the psychological impact, and I know you've got a focus here, but I want to touch a little bit on this of now that this is coming out about these vaccines and all the other things that are causing things like autism, they're saying and they're proving. How does that make you feel as a mother raising children and all of that going on, saying that maybe this is something I got as a kid, and then now I've given to my kid as a kid, and finding out what exactly is in those things?
Oh, you want to go down that path? Okay. Well, before we get started,
Well, I mean, there's a psychological aspect to this because a lot of mothers are looking at that too. And even with CPS, their kids are gone saying, I'm abusing my child. And some are saying they're getting this flow, with some of them saying, you're not getting the immunizations, you're not doing this, you're not doing this. And there are a group of people that do not do this, and they have a constitutional right to do this, to say no.
right.
And what my saying is we weren't given all the truth. And what's the psychological impact to, say, mothers? I mean, I feel lied to because I didn't feel like I could protect my family because I wasn't given all the information. But how are women feeling about this, and mothers about, once again, there's just so much enrolling in so fast, guys. Let me explain this. In our world today and in our government, we're going through a massive metamorphosis of peeling several things off, and truth is coming out. And this has got a huge psychological impact for all of us. But this is one of the more recent ones that's kind of a hot topic lately that we're finding.
It has been for a very long time.
Mothers that are realizing it.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I am not a medical professional, so it is up to you to discuss and decide what is the best choice for your own child. The beautiful thing is that we do get to make those choices. And bottom line, no parent is perfect. We're never going to make all of the right decisions for our children, and we're going to make some wrong ones. And that's okay. We need to have grace for ourselves in that. I don't think that you need to feel guilt. I don't think that you need to feel shame if you made a choice for your child that has been proven that maybe it was not the best choice. It ultimately doesn't matter. You still chose the best that you knew how to choose with the information that you had. So I think that it's very easy, especially for mothers, to get caught up in the spiral of guilt and shame when they discover that perhaps one of the choices that they made for their children may not have been the best choice. But again, you're only given so much information. You can only make the best decision that you can make at the time with the information that you have. And there's no sense in getting yourself all wrapped up in those feelings, because you didn't know any better, and that's okay. And even if you did know better and you still thought that was the best decision you made, it's still okay.
Now, some of the topic too that you want to discuss tonight was some of narcissism and narcissist, I believe, was one of the topics tonight. No,
No.
where were we going tonight? Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe that was a discussion for another show. That guys, if that's not this show, I guarantee you we will be having a show. I almost 100% guarantee it. We will have a show on narcissism and
Probably at
narcissists.
some point, but that was
And
not
trust
tonight.
me, okay, so that was the topic for later. Sorry, I do get I'm running 1,000 miles an hour. I know Sharon is, and sometimes we're both going so crazy right now. It's hard to keep track of things, let alone did I
We've
eat
had a
today?
lot on our plate this last week or
No,
two, so yes. No,
so we're
tonight
tonight.
I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to discuss PTSD and the effects that it has on our bodies, and how it can relate to the situations as we are experiencing them. Um, Again, I am not a therapist. I am not a medical professional. I do have a background in psychology. I do read a lot, and I have a lot of life experience. So when I do speak, I am not giving you recommendations based off what a therapist or a medical professional might tell you. Um, it's up to you whether you want to speak to them or not. I am just merely coming from what
Well,
I've
now
learned from
what
my
she's
point of
trying to
view.
say here is being a proponent is she has got the education and the experience and the knowledge that is where she's coming from. She speaks from a thing of authority and education. If you don't have that, you have options, yes, to seek professionals, but if not, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you being your best advocate for your family and doing it yourself and understanding the
Yes.
complexities that are your children and your spouse.
Always do your own
So we do
research.
advocate for self-education as well.
Always
Yes.
do your own
Always
research.
do your own research. Confirm what we say. Absolutely.
Always do your own research. Okay. So I did take notes tonight. Now, a lot of what I'm going to share with you tonight comes from this specific book. It is called The Body Keeps the Score. It was written by Bessel van der Kolk, MD, which I may or may not be getting that name correctly. This is a really good one to have on your shelf or get from your library and at least skim through or read through. It has a lot of good information. But we all, as parents who have dealt with the system one way or another, have experienced trauma. Um, Court litigation abuse is real. Um, Abuse and the taking of our rights is real. These can be traumatic, extremely traumatic events. If your kids were removed from you, that is a traumatic event. So you have experienced trauma, and PTSD can be a side effect of trauma. So I wanted to go over some of the things that you could be experiencing and some of the things that may help. Um, so first thing that I wanted to cover is every single one of us is different. My experience in this system has been different from what your experience in the system has. Gunnar and I are married, and we have two completely different experiences with this system. My body is different from your body, so how I experience trauma is going to be very different from how you experience trauma, and how I am going to cope with my trauma is going to be very different from how you cope with your trauma. So, but there are some key factors that are going to be similar or the same across the board. So, the first thing that I wanted to bring out is that we all have a nervous system, and our, I can't remember, I think it's the parasympathetic. I'm not going to get technical. Anyway, one aspect of our nervous system is the fight or flight. And we're all kind of familiar with this. This is where our adrenaline or epinephrine kicks in, and it gets us going to where we're either going to stand up and fight or we're going to run away. We also have a stress hormone called cortisol, which helps regulate blood sugar metabolism, and it helps with our immune response. When we experience trauma, specific types of trauma, in a typical situation, your stress hormones will rise, and then you will react, and then as soon as the threat is over, the hormones will dissipate and you will return to normal. When
Now,
you're
let me
dealing
point out
with a
something
situation
here. Let me point out something here. The other thing is there's a lot of street drugs and everything else that what she's talking about, that de-escalation is a lot of what heroin abuse is for, and a lot of other drugs out there to make them feel or remake that thing of going through that traumatic and getting into a place or a transition of peace. It mimics it, but it's a false
interesting.
mimic. Uh, just so you guys, so once again, that's how it ties together with our drug abuse problem. I would say right there is saying these drugs out here, these street drugs, are mimicking things of getting away or dealing with PTSD. That's why heroin was so widely used after Vietnam. From the historical aspect, is because they wanted that escape and that peace from the gunfire, from the helos, from the heat, from Agent Orange, and the other things that our veterans were thinking. Matter of fact, that's when heroin became extremely prevalent in our country. Was after the
Oh, there
Vietnam
you go.
War.
I learned something
So
new tonight.
sorry, history.
I know.
It's
You're so good with the
uh,
history stuff.
learn as we go. Hey, there's your one for the day. Anything else is better. I always say at least learn one new thing a day
Absolutely.
to keep your brain sharp and go from there. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so when we are traumatized and we experience a traumatic event, our stress hormones will raise and they may not dissipate, and they will be constantly at a higher level in our bloodstream, which can cause issues such as weight gain. It can cause increased anxiety, agitation, restlessness, irritability, loss of focus. You can end up with long-term health issues. Some people will develop fibromyalgia and other chronic illnesses because your body does not understand that the threat is over, and you keep reliving it over and over, and your body just completely stresses out.
Or it can cause you cardiovascular problems as
Yes,
well.
yes, it can.
Very much
Yeah,
so.
thanks. I forgot about that.
That's what I'm here for, guys, to pick up the things and fill in the pieces so we get as
This
much
is
as we
why we
can.
work so well
Uh,
together. So
yeah,
I specifically
uh,
have been through some very traumatic events, and I have an issue with dissociation, and I get very spacey, and I will forget things as I go along. And so Gunnar is actually extremely good at figuring out what's going on in my brain and
yeah.
finishing my sentences and helping me remember what I'm forgetting.
Guys, Goddess, yeah, check out your solution. Guys, if you want to send me, Gunner, an email, we have an email that's set up that both Sharon and I have access
Yeah.
to for both of us. It's expo, expo, dot tn. I'm sorry, what is it? No, I just brain farted right
Go
there.
look
What
it
was
up
it?
because I can't
Uh,
tell you. But we both get
yeah,
those
sorry, guys.
emails.
It's just been one of
It
those
has.
days. Guys, it's It's expo.cps.tn@gmail.com. And guys, you're not going to want to take and miss, like I said, as this show progresses, we're doing what we can right now, and I'll put it in the comments. Like I said, there's a lot going on in our nation, and that's where we're trying to cover a lot of bases for you guys, because there is a psychological aspect of what we're all going to go through, because we are going through a change in history. Our country is, that will go down as something remembered. And you got to understand, we've lost the art of verbal communication and verbal history in our families and cultures, that nobody's going to remember it. And then it comes down to what's going to be in a what do you call it, in a history book, because it depends on who the author is.
Yes.
That's what we went through with Common Core and all that other things, that the Department of Education screwed everybody else. They had control. Matter of fact, you know what? You're going through traumas. I want to show you. I found, and I'm going to say something very prolific, and I say this because she knows what I mean. The definition psychologically of a family is bonded trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes you a family, is that you have bonded trauma. Moms, dads, kids, we're all going through little traumas.
Are you talking about
as we go through, big and
becoming
small?
bonded through trauma?
You do it naturally as family. Do you
Sorry.
not? The ups and downs with grandma dying and this and that. We're talking about, we're all feeling something very similar,
yeah.
even though it's same, but we have a relation.
So
So we're sharing bonded traumas as being part of a family and being interactive as
trauma
a family.
bonding, yes. But we
Trauma bonding.
still,
That's actually what
we will still, every person in the household will experience the same situation, but their perception and the experience in their body is different. Okay. So, and this is where I'm going, is your body will keep the score. Your body will maintain and will retain the trauma. Now, everybody's bodies, so to speak, are made up of 3 or 4 different aspects. You have your mental, your physical, your spiritual. I like to cut it up and put it also emotional. A lot of people will put mental, emotional together, or spiritual and emotional together, but I like to think of them all as separate aspects. So when you are thinking and dealing in terms of trauma, you want to think about all aspects of your body. You want to think about how it's affecting your brain, how it's affecting your physical body, how it's affecting your mental health, your emotional health, and how it's affecting your spiritual side. Now, everybody is going to look at all of these a little bit differently. We're all going to experience it a little bit differently, but it's important to remember that
they can have aspects of each one of them in different, we'll say, amounts. In other words, a little bit more spiritual and a little less physical, a little bit more mental, maybe, and a little bit more spiritual, those type of things, emotional. And it depends on the person. And no, I'm not interrupting her. I'm explaining it so she can explain to one half of the people, and I explain the other half. And somehow or another, it just works when we have to have conversations with people. So I'm like, wait a minute, babe, you're missing this aspect. And then she's over here, yeah, but you missed this aspect. Well, that's what being a unit or a good partner is about. And understanding how your partner may miscommunicate as well, to help fill in the blanks of saying, listen, I know it came out like that. And her and I were talking about that about something that happened earlier on something else where there was a huge miscommunication. It's like, stop, don't talk anymore. And it's just like, let me correct. And that's the beauty of having a partner when you're talking about people that you want to choose, that you're going to be with and go through some of these traumas with, like she's talking about, that knows that about you.
Yes.
You're not alone if you have that trusted partner. And I'm saying I'm very blessed to have a trusted partner like Sharon, due to the fact that we do complement each other very well. And I can understand her, she can understand me. And I'm the hardest person everybody says to understand. And she's like, not really. It's just him. And he has his unique way. But once again, she was raised in a military family and her dad was very a certain way. And she understood that
Very
culture.
unique.
That sometimes there's that dysfunctional culture sometimes in your homes because you weren't raised in the
Well,
same culture. You're raised in your parents'
every
culture.
home, every family, every person is different. So you either learn to love the one you're with and figure them out
Yeah.
and how they tick, or you're miserable. I mean, like, which way are you gonna go?
Well, I mean, exactly. But I mean, those things too, our family, I mean, we can look at that. We can all see, like, give you an example. Yeah, you're all used to going to grandma's house. We'll say, and that's one of your parents, one of your parents' parents. And you're used to going over there for, say, dinner or this, that, and you have maybe a tradition, this, that, and that person passes. You all are going to have some form of, and they call it just grieving. What it is actually grieving is actually, I would classify as what they want to say grieving is the healing process from that traumatic
It can be.
experience, is allowing yourself to grieve. I mean, that's a section of it, or one term
Personally,
that's
I think
used.
that grief comes along with trauma, regardless. Like when we're talking about
Oh
trauma,
yes.
PTSD, and anything else, I think that grief is a big part of it. Um, so sorry, I lost my track here. You threw me off.
It's okay.
No,
Well,
I had
we got to be entertaining for the show, and we're good. We got to have some
I
interaction.
know.
It's not.
Debbie, I heard that your grandson is coming home, and I am so excited
Yes,
for you guys. Like, I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
yes.
I'm so excited. Um, all right, so I really wanted to share this quote because I came across it today, and it was one of the best things I have heard in terms of trauma, and it's beautiful. Again, it comes from this book, The Body Keeps the Score. But it says, nobody can treat a war or abuse, rape, molestation, or any other horrendous event, such as some of the things that we've been through. For that matter, what has happened cannot be undone. But what can be dealt with are the imprints of the trauma on body, mind, and soul. And I just think that's so beautiful
Mhm.
because it's so true. Because everybody, like, we are not going to get out of being on this earth without experiencing trauma of some sort. And everybody goes through something horrific at some point in their life. And you can't treat that. You can't avoid it. It's going to happen. And just the fact that there's hope in healing after the fact is a beautiful thing, but it's our responsibility to work on that for ourselves. Nobody else can do that for us. And
Well, I think the thing that to address there too is the power we have of self to set boundaries on what to let in and let
mhm,
out. I mean, there's something that's not taught. You have the ability to make the choice on whether or not you're going to let it affect you or not. And that's a visible, and that's a fight within
yes.
itself. Um, to or not. And a lot of people don't understand. I think the biggest example I've ever seen, um, hey, Patton, um, is a funeral, is how people respond when someone dies. It's never the
Oh,
same. One person's just like it's
no.
nothing. Another person is just, oh God, and then some. Everybody's different in how they process it. But I've seen people that had mental
Mm,
toughness, and when I talk about mental toughness now, there's some of you that have been to funerals, and let me explain something that's a little bit different. When you're chosen or you're asked to do a duty above and beyond just a funeral, such as a pallbearer, you cannot be overtaken by your emotions that you do not do your job. Let's make sure that that's clear. And if somebody thinks there is, A good funeral home director will say, let me have a stand in case this person loses it, as an alternate, as they'll say. But there's something you have to do in certain situations that you have got to turn things on and off and be so self-disciplined to get through it. It's the only way you get through
No
it.
kidding.
And once again, that there goes hand in hand with a PTSD of, and this is where we learn from our mistakes or learn from our PTSD is what I like to say. I now have control over those things because I'm aware they exist. Mm-hmm. And it's up to me on whether or not I turn them on or off, or I feel safe enough or comfortable enough to do those. Because there's one thing I'd never understood, probably till I got older, was when my grandfather actually lost somebody and he was shed a tear. He didn't until he got home and he locked himself in his bedroom, his safest place. That was either just with him or him and his wife. It was the only place. And this man was a World War II vet, had seen hell, that he felt nowhere safe to be himself, that in his own home and in his own bedroom and amongst just his wife, his peace. That's what I'm talking about.
I think that's a very military experience in general, because when they're in their situations that they get in, there's no room for an emotional reaction until after the fact. No. So
war, yeah, there's no choice. Y'all,
I had to bury my first husband, and I had to plan the funeral and everything else. It was rough, but we got through it.
Well, and once again, you don't have an option in that thing because you're in charge, whether you're grieving or not. Shit's got to get done. Kids still got to get fed. They got to be clothed. And that goes for anybody that is widowed. Or somebody that dies in a car accident and they're left with this. They've still got that family, still got to deal with that shit. And those kids, that the thing that will trauma bond them, once again, going back to that makes them family, is now they all have to endure that same thing from a different perspective of burying a parent. Mm-hmm. That changes somebody forever.
Yes, it does.
But they can't have it. Nobody else shares that bond, which is what a family is, which is even back from the days of tents and tribes and all this other stuff, was they shared all the daily burdens, including the losses and everything else, as a family. And as you pointed out before, and I love that saying you said, family came before government.
Oh, yes. Yes, it did. It had to.
It's the foundational principle. Well, and there it is. But once again, I love that you said that it has to. But now we see everything else that's at the world around us, and we're some of the few that it's not been torn. We've still had it torn away from us. But once again, that's what they want. They don't want families. I mean, and then you talk about post-traumatic stress. Yes, military is very unique, but the loss of a loved one, or as you say, a loss of a spouse, or a loss of your children.
Well, PTSD
is
post-traumatic stress. It can be anything that's traumatic. It can be a natural disaster. It could be war. It could be losing a spouse. It could be losing your child. I know Sam sometimes gets on here and she talks about ambiguous grief. It's the grieving the loss of somebody who's still alive. That's a very traumatic situation. And as we all know, in this community that we've been building here, is we don't just experience the trauma and walk out of it. We're living with the trauma every single day while we wait for our kids to come home, while we wait to be able to go home, whatever our situation is. That stress is on us every single day, and we can't walk away from it. And so we either find ways to heal through it, learn, grow, and cope, or we suffer, or everything altogether is also a possibility. So,
or as I like to say, embrace the suck.
Yes, that would be your saying, yeah. So,
embrace the suck. It just sucks. You got to deal with it one way or another. Let's just get it fucking over with.
Returning back to this idea that we are all encompassing our areas of our bodies, our mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, um, you carry certain emotions and feelings within your body. So,
Mhm.
for example, um, especially for some of us parents who have gone through missing children and such, you will feel anguish in your heart. Anger is usually related to stored in the liver. Bitterness is related to your gallbladder. Hopelessness can be in your bone marrow. Self-blame is tonsils. I mean, it kind of sounds weird, but different as parts of your body, it's all interconnected. And these things that we are feeling in your brain is connected to the rest of you. So your mental health is connected to
Mhm.
the rest of you. So when you have anxiety or you're feeling anger or you're feeling nervousness, I mean, have how many of us have walked into a situation where we are so nervous that we feel a knot in our stomach and our our internal organs start making funny rumbling noises because we're just like that nervous, or we get a tension headache because of whatever reason. um all of those feelings, your emotions are related to your mental and your physical. So it's really important, especially as we are all still living in some of this trauma that we're experiencing, to take care of our brains, to be taking care of our bodies, and to be doing the best that we can to alleviate some of the the gosh, where was I going?
Impact.
Yes, thank you. Some of the impact
Welcome.
and help with the stress hormones that are going to be circulating constantly, because otherwise we are going to develop, like, we will develop chronic illnesses, pains, all sorts of things. So one of the ways that we can do this is to nurture our brain and to help it heal. There's specific
Mhm.
vitamins and minerals. Getting enough sleep is so important if we can. A lot of us with PTSD don't sleep well at all. A lot of us have insomnia.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
sure. I'm sure.
Listen, I can tell you some of the things, the best advice, and it was different, but especially when I was younger, and maybe that helped some of my coping skills. Is when even when I was a child or somebody, and you got angry at something or this or that, and say we were around, it was summertime, and you blew a fit or something like that. We'd had family reunions when I was really young, and we had a big wood pile. Everybody bring in their campers, everything else, stuff like that, and stay on there or tent. And they had a few other places, but they had a little chunk of land. The old farm is what it was. Um, and those things are gone now. But that when you got mad, they'd say, "Go if you're that damn mad, go pick up that axe and start chopping wood." Do something physical. If you got something, that's why they say they're out in the
Yeah.
woodshed. Why? They're taking out that anger. They're sitting there chopping that wood. They're doing something productive. Why? Because if I'm not doing that, at least I'm doing exercise for my
Yes.
body and strengthening my body and using that negative
Yes.
energy towards something positive. Of they used to say stuff like that, or go for a
Yes.
walk, or if you're this and this and that, go
Yes.
for a run. Why? Because it resets the brain
Yes.
chemistry.
Actually, breathing and exercise are two very important aspects to
Yeah,
healing your body in any case. Um, just the very act of breathing and focusing in on that breathing
yeah,
will calm your, I want to say, limbic system. That may be correct, that may be not. It will calm,
well,
your body down, and you will be able to think more clearly. You will be able to assess your situation better. Exercise in general just kind of helps, like, get your blood flowing, get your everything moving, and get you kind of refocused. In
and
fact, this book.
And when you're anxious too, the other part anxious too, that part of the things we do is an exercise now, and we go through this when things get extremely stressful, is one, you start lacking your body's oxygen, which he's talking about the breathing
Mm-hmm.
part. Um, I was yes, I do. I was certified as a professional trainer at one time, so yes, I know as far as the genealogy and everything else. I know what I'm talking or kinesi
Kinesiology.
brain fart. You know what I'm. Yes, that word. I'm a
I
little tongue
totally forgot
tied.
about that
So
actually.
yeah, so the point is that I did understand the human body and what it took to, in a way, manipulate to do what it did for bodybuilding. And yes, I trained with some professional bodybuilders that did compete and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into a lot of that. I didn't train; I trained with them, but I was able because I was so interested. A lot of those guys are their own personal trainers because they have so much knowledge about their own
Mm-hmm.
body, and I was very interested in learning about that. But to talk about that oxygen, that's why I always use the word with her, and she'll get this too, as saying, "Give me 3 deep breaths and
Yes, I do
recenter."
it with the kids all the time too when they get to the point where they can't
Yes.
regulate and they get too
Hmm.
overworked up. It's just, okay, stop, take 3 deep breaths, let's start over.
Make sure they're deep breaths, and you'll notice a
Mm-hmm.
pattern. They will slow their breathing
Yes.
down. What you're doing is a form of manipulating of redirection of your body's
Yes.
breathing, and you're getting more oxygen, and when you have more oxygen, your thinking goes back on. See, when you shut down part of your thinking, your body goes in, she's talking that fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
mode. That's part of that trigger to where they're just focused on surviving because they're involved in an argument or a heated argument. It's
Right.
survival on a simple level. But once we get oxygen in, our brain begins to work again. We begin to
Yeah.
think. But when we're low on oxygen, we tend to not think
Mm-hmm.
clearly. That's why what we're talking about, that energy, even when you guys are going through that, as far as some of your trauma and your PTSD, is when you're getting bad and you're feeling that trigger, take 3 deep breaths, get more of that oxygen in, redirect your body, your mind, and everything else, and recenter yourself back to where you need to do. And trust me, it works. I learned it a long time ago, and I won't go to where I say
It's
I
one of
learned
the
that,
first
but
things you
it's a
learn,
way.
especially if you've done any sort of trauma counseling, therapy, anything else. It especially helps, like, if you're prone to panic attacks, it's one of the ways that they
Mhm.
tell you to use to get out of it. So I also have this book. It's called The PTSD Breakthrough. Dr. Franklin Lawless. It's it also has some very helpful information in it. But in it, they do recommend individual exercise methods such as playing a musical instrument. Music is extremely therapeutic. There is such a thing as music therapy.
Mhm.
They use it with inmates, they use it with special needs people, they use it in a lot of different places. And it's super, like,
They use it in the prison systems as
inmates,
well.
yes.
Certain areas, and
So
yeah.
if you have never learned how to play a musical instrument, I can say from personal experience, it can be one of the most calming things to do is to just practice. And it's a great way to connect your brain with your body. Um
Right. Now,
Swimming is also
you know,
sorry, I'm just gonna go through this real quick. Swimming is also
go
a
ahead.
really good one. Some people use yoga or just walking or tai chi. I personally picked up mixed martial arts as a way to cope and get through some of the stress and trauma, and actually that's really been super helpful because once you get on the mat, you can't think about anything else, and uh, punching things is therapeutic. So
So we've talked about, I mean, some of the things with post traumatic stress syndrome and this and that. Now, we've talked a lot about a short term interim. What I want to do here, and this is something I wanted to show to you and to all of our viewers, of this viewpoint of something I found, and I kind of want to talk about it of a long term or a multi generational psychological warfare on the individual and on the family. And I want you guys to watch this because, man, this is messed up, and this is on. Well, let's just watch it.
He was at the house one night, and we were talking, and he started laughing. He said, "Aaron, what do you think women's liberation was about?" And I said, I had pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. I said, I think it's about women having the right to work, getting equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote, you know? And he started to laugh. He said, "You're an idiot." And I said, "Why am I an idiot?" He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded women's lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all over the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, "And you want to know why?" He says, "There were two primary reasons." And they were, one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before women's lib. And the second reason was now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. It breaks up the family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them. And so those are the two primary reasons for women's lib, which I thought up to that point was a noble thing. You know, when I saw their intentions behind it, where they were coming from when they created it, the thought of it, I saw the evil behind what I thought was a noble venture. Is that
Wow.
You're going all sorts of directions tonight, I see.
Well, I'm going to talk about long-term family generational PTSD here. It is where I wanted to go with this, from the individual to the family, which is what CPS is doing, creating that PTSD, to now multi-generational of their saying that wasn't the intent, but we thought it was noble. The same thing with CPS is flying the same false flag under. This is a noble cause. Now, what would that do to a family that it's been done to grandparent, to parent, to now grandchild, baby? That's gone on for 3 generations of PTSD of individuals. What's that going to cause? Because like he said right in there, the point is to get to the children.
Okay. So I actually might have an answer, or somewhat of an answer. So, let's see if I can do this. So if you take just a typical, what we would call nuclear family in the US, father, mother, children, right?
Well, that's like it all across the world, the way it's been for generations.
So if you remove the father from the home, it automatically leaves the women and children vulnerable. It doesn't matter how strong the woman is. It doesn't matter how capable we are, because we are strong and we are capable, but it still leaves us vulnerable because we have all the added extra responsibility to not only protect our children, but to raise them and take care of them, nurture them, and everything else. So now our workload has doubled because our partner is no longer there. If you then remove the mother from the home as well, that leaves all of the children completely vulnerable, because now they have neither protector,
and programmable.
And we're talking about a typical nuclear, like we're talking about like a family that isn't, I mean, like there's a lot of situations where it can't happen. I mean, like I lost a husband. It was me and my kids. There was nothing I could do about it. There was nothing that was going to change that. But I knew that immediately he was gone, my workload doubled and tripled. My kids were vulnerable. I was vulnerable. If I had to leave the home and go to work, my kids were that much more vulnerable. If I have to send them to school where they're being raised by strangers, I know for a fact that there's going to be a blind spot. I'm not going to see everything they're doing. I'm not going to see every person they're interacting with. I'm not going to know everything that they're going to experience in a day.
Well, on top of it, you're distracted. If you're a working mom, you're focused on your job and your career and all these other things that are there. And because now they forced you into almost a two family
Yes.
income, and which is what he was talking about. Now it's more tax dollars that we're now finding out that is bullshit from the tax dollars they've been
Correct.
stealing. That's now being
So then,
revealed. But what we're, you look at it, but let's look at it from this perspective: psychological warfare. Women's lib, because here's the reason for women's lib. It was not this; it was the fact when their husband died or anything else. It wasn't about the right to vote. It was about the land rights. They couldn't own property. So they needed a way they wanted to own property. Well, at that time, when you owned property, it gave you a right to vote. They went hand in hand. So they sold you it was under the thing for vote, but it was under to make sure once you didn't get sent back to your parents or your brother's house. Remember some of those terms and old ways of doing things you read about even the Bible and other places? You went back to your family if you lost your husband? No, they wanted to stay by themselves. I'm old. I don't need to return to my family, or everybody's
in our
dead.
current society, it's not always possible either.
No.
Well, and here's another aspect of it that a lot of people either don't realize or have never thought of. Okay, so technically speaking, a woman existed, half of us existed in our grandmother's womb, because as our mother developed in our grandmother's womb, her eggs also developed. Girls are born with all of the eggs they will ever have in their entire life. So the eggs that developed in my mother, as she developed in my grandmother, which resulted in me and my sister, means that we are connected. And a lot of people don't. We as women are connected to our previous generations, 2 generations back. We have roots in our families. But what a lot of people don't understand is that every single trauma, every anxiety, everything that your mother or your grandmother
it all goes in your DNA.
During their pregnancy, it gets written into your DNA. So
same way with your immunities and how your body adapts as the world's changing. All that goes into, and that word which has been misused is a form of evolution, natural evolution, as our bodies adapt to the world we live in, generation after generation after generation.
So the stresses that my grandmother experienced during her pregnancy with my mother will be written into my mother's DNA and also into mine. And my mother's experiences while she was pregnant with me are written into my DNA and my daughter's.
So let's go into this. And if that's absolutely true, then that means your children, product of your mom and that you were a product of your grandmother, of hers, yes. Right? What was that time period? That was called the Great Depression.
My grandmother was
strong women.
My grandmother was a very strong woman, very strong-willed. And she had stress in her life. And so trauma actually does, in fact, scientifically carry down through generations. And some of the things that we experience in our bodies as we grow and develop can be traced back to some of those things that our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, and that's the thing, is like, my DNA was developed in my grandmother, but her DNA was developed in like her grandmother. So like we have roots way back.
So listen, this is the other thing that they understood. The Germans understood this we talked about Project Paperclip and all that. There was a lot of psychological warfare and everything else that was done by the Germans during World War I and World War II. A lot of experiments, a lot of discoveries, this and that. And not all of them were good or positive. They were to weaken the enemy or how to manipulate people, control people. This has been going on for, a long time, but we're for all that to pass down, and all of that to go on. And then on top of it, you're not being told the truth. Because if you've heard this thing that like these women, they wanted this liberation because they were doing this and it was all about abuse and this and that. And that didn't hold really true for a majority of homes. Families were very well protected. Women were, matter of fact, they were property. If they were probably the greatest fucking investment they had, because their goal for anybody in a family was to have a large, strong, healthy family. Why? That meant a bigger farm, plantation, this and that to be worked by your family and grow. That goes all the way back to the tribes in Israel, the same concept.
Personally, I mean, I don't think all of their premise was wrong, but I think that the women's lib movement actually, we gave up a lot of our power as women, more than what anybody really realizes.
Yeah. Well, and once again, like he was saying, in the video, that wasn't the intent, though. We thought it was honorable, but their intent was actually devious. In other words, the same thing with CPS. We thought their intentions were honorable, or they came to us with a flag of peace and protection and saying we do all this stuff for the kids, and then instead turn around and it's not the fucking case. It's just a big fucking sham. And matter of fact, it's doing more damage. It's doing more damage. Let me put this clear by the statistic numbers by the Department of Health and Human Services, the National Division. CPS does more damage to the family than if a child was actually abused.
Well, and CPS,
there's lower numbers of actual abuse than what they do.
And this is the thing is, single moms are a target for a reason, because it's much easier to remove a child from one parent than it is to remove them from two. I mean, look at the lengths they have to go to remove a father from the household in order to get him out of the way, in order to make mom and kids vulnerable, in order to manipulate a situation where they can take the kids. It does happen. And I know that's not everybody.
Now, hold on. Now, let's deal with this, and let's deal with some social media stuff too, because we're going to tie all this stuff together. Trust me. Is the fact that now we've broken all these homes with CPS and everything else. Okay. And now the perception that is being given to a lot of younger women and girls is that men are shit, or we have weak men, and men are not this, and men are this. What did you think was going to happen when you broke the home? Now you're turning around and the abuse of men to women has gone up because of broken homes.
Yes.
Now they're holding true to, they think, this is the psychological warfare. Now it makes people of today, women of today, think it must have been true. Thank God we have women's lib, because now we can do all for everything else and this and that. And I don't need a man type of psychology, because they're all abusive. They weren't abusive. The numbers were extremely low when there was a family. Why? I can tell you this from experience. This is the oral part they don't want to tell you. When you have a family member fuck up, hit on his wife, or do any stupid shit like that, let alone abuse a kid, it was dealt with the family or the neighborhood.
Correct.
Cops were just there to pick up the trash when we were done. And nothing was done, no assault charges, none of this other, until they figured out they could make a profit off of that, correcting the problem. Well, you beat the hell out of him and this and that. I don't know, he fell down the fucking stairs. Cops were there to pick him up. You never know. They may have took the long way to the station to check him into the jail, and he's tore up a little bit more. Or maybe he didn't make it. Caught him in the act with a child. They just killed him. Cops used to write that off as justifiable homicide. Mm-hmm. We don't do that anymore, because the family has turned, the power of the family is now over at your elected and appointed officials and actors. They have taken over your family. That's what that guy was talking about. Now I have your fucking children, which is why I know you're a big proponent for homeschooling, just due to the fact I don't want that to happen.
Correct.
But you're talking about a long-term psychological warfare on the American people, under the guise of false flags, convincing people this is what happened. I mean, they went through the whole thing, the Mandela effect. This is all done by the CIA as a mind game. So you, as even the younger generation, doesn't listen to the older generation saying, you're senile, you're crazy. That ain't the way it happened because I Googled this and that. Oh, there was never a movie with Sinbad, as a genie and all this. Really? Because I've seen it.
Right?
Matter of fact, they've produced the tapes and everything else. We remember the whole thing until he came out and said, "Oh no, man, I just." They've been playing this game on us the entire time. That's what ripping off the Band-Aid is happening lately. What we're trying to do too, as far as the PTSD you're getting ready to experience, is the fact that there's going to be so much truth that is coming out. It's not even been 3 months, people. 3 months, and the amount of stuff that has changed and the things are going, oh, shit.
It hasn't even been 2 months yet. It hasn't.
Hey. But we have the tea.
Right?
That's what we're preparing you for. And you guys that are watching us about CPS, when especially her and I tell you things are going to change, they're going to change. When we tell you on this net, we're not talking, let's just put it this way. It's not a petition. It's not that. We've already told you who we've been talking to as far as the federal government and this and that. They're, like I said, they're waiting to see what we're going to do because every crime has to have a victim. Okay. And that's what I'm talking about. Every crime has to have a victim, right? And that's where, as far as anything else, I have to watch what I say because you can't interfere on an ongoing federal investigation. Correct. I can tell you that we have turned things over. They are aware of it. There is ongoing investigations. Federally, they are looking at things, which, yes, it does tie to the things with the judges. Yes, it does tie to the things with what they're looking at, this and that. We are doing our best, but one thing you have to understand about Sharon and I is we have had several hiccups of stuff we should have had done a long time ago. And we have had to endure what we've been going through even longer because of another thing that has been brought up. And we're not mentioning any names. We're going to just say a bar associate that just did not even see anything. Like I said, and once it hits, it's going to blow everybody's fucking mind of like, who the fuck turned that shit away and what a fucking idiot. I mean, but once again, that's why people are calling out the bar that you're seeing today is because of this stupidness that they should know this shit, the constitutional part. States are not supposed to be doing anything outside the Constitution. They're not supposed to be causing traumatic experiences for your family or even entering your fucking home without a warrant or court order and a legal one. And you're supposed to have the right to say no. And when they take and come and pass that, they don't want you to know you can use your Second Amendment.
No.
It's your choice.
Why would they want you to know that? Why would they want you
to
know
because it would stop them. If you knew, listen, you broke into somebody's house, you didn't have that stuff. That badge didn't mean shit. It's that piece of paper that made you legal.
No.
And it was stamped and signed and on the record and all of it was there. We knew what a warrant was. Trust me. Inner city Chicago, you knew what a real warrant was and what a bullshit warrant was. Why? Because we had some crooked cops in the Chicagoland area that tried to serve people with false fucking warrants and court orders.
Well, they count on your
till the people got educated.
Is what it is. They count on you being ignorant of your rights. You should not be ignorant of your rights.
And that's why, on top of it, they don't want you to read cursive, so you can't read the Bill of Rights or the Constitution in its original format.
Correct.
Guys, they are systematically coming after us with psychological warfare to destroy our families. Why? Because the destruction of the family is profitable. And here's the other reason why. because the states came up with the family court systems. And guess who else came up with a no fault, no contest divorce? The states. Why? You got to make a profit. You had to have a legitimate reason to get divorced. None of we just don't get along. We don't see eye to eye. This, that. No. You had to prove somebody was beating on somebody. Hard evidence, like in a court of law. Or you had to take a turn around and say, this was going on. Person went off to jail right there. Or the fact that, you're, terroristic threatening, a lot of those other things. You had to have a legitimate reason to get divorced. And the court said, no, we ain't making enough money off this. They ain't getting divorced fast enough. You know how much money we make? Matter of fact, Social Security Act of 1935 turns around and says, if we enforce the child support part, we get money too.
Yes. Well, they make money off everything, every aspect of every bit of it.
All at the cost of we the people's mental health, 100%. So you have generational PTSD.
Correct.
So the thing is now with people having kids come home, and we'll kind of wrap up this section here for you. Yes, we are the late show. We'll continue on with a few things. It's preparing your children when they come home, or you have reunification, some of these other things, of some of the PTSD that you got to understand. It's a shared trauma now with you and your children. And here's why. Because you've been ripped away sometimes completely, and you now both have to heal together. And this isn't an adult. This is a little child you're now bonding with trauma. And that's what's bonding you together. And there's going to be a lot of blame. There's going to be a lot of this and that because of the shit that they've been told and put into their heads that ain't true. And then finding out, like, especially in several cases we know about, and in ours, where you've got people that are lying, manipulating, perjury, and you have evidence of it. And, not courts not following proper procedure, doing hearings, violating constitutional rights. I mean, it all goes on when you have nowhere to run, and your own elected and appointed officials have turned on you to not make things fair and ethical. You got to understand that state court systems were designed to do one thing: mediate. Yep. Come to an agreeable separation or coming together.
And in fact, if as we hope your kids do come home at some point, the best advice I can give you is do the work for you to heal and to come out of this now, because those children are going to need your support and your help and the knowledge that you gain in going through it for yourself before they come home, because it's going to be a long, hard road. I've done it. I'm raising trauma children. It's hard some days because of their own trauma.
Multiply traumatized children.
They have been traumatized multiple times. If I don't do the work for myself to learn how to cope and to learn how to heal and to learn what works and what doesn't, I can't help them. So before your kids ever come home, I highly, highly, highly recommend do the work now before they come home, because it is so much harder to heal and walk them through healing at the same time.
Oh, hello, Miss Bailey Goddard. Hey, Bailey. Good to see you.
Hi.
You remember Bailey?
It took me a second. I was like, wait, that name sounds familiar.
Took a minute.
Hey, Bailey.
Removing a child without a court order or a warrant on a hearsay thing. To remove a child, there are federal statutes. And Bailey, I know where you're at, and I will confidently say here, confidently on the air, they are violating constitutional rights where you're at, and a lot. And yes, you've got to have that. There has to be an investigation. There has to be a hearing before a child is removed. A matter of fact, the Social Security Act of 1935, Section 1101, specifically says for them to receive any funding, federal funding, whatsoever to that state, that it gives them no right to come into a home without probable cause. And no, and a need for an investigation or anything is not. It is deferring to the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, that you have to have probable cause, properly articulated, with a firsthand knowledgeable experience, which CPS officers do not have. Anything else falls under the hearsay rule. This is happening all over the nation. This is what exactly Trump was calling out. If you guys didn't understand, when the DOJ and everything was talking about these administrative judges, they all state judges, all the way up to the Supreme Court and everything, are Article 1 judges under the Constitution, administrative judges. So this is what he's talking about. He cannot allude to it. Our president cannot take and allude to it directly. And people understand they're playing chess, not checkers. We know what's going on, and we know what they're looking at and what they're looking for, all of it. And trust me, they're going to get all of it. And they've already got a whole part of it. They're not following the Constitution. They're not following the law. I can confidently say that there's going to be one state in this union that is going to rock this country wide open and rip open everything that you guys are dealing with on a very, very public stage. Even enough that I can say that our president is aware of what's going on. I will just tell you, this is chess, not checkers. Be patient. They're getting to things as they can, but this is a multi-layered. And what you don't understand is, since the passing of the Chevron doctrine, which some of you do or do not know, it allowed them to circumvent so much, which has now been found and overturned to be unconstitutional. They were all considering themselves specialists and basically saying they had the right to choose and pick which laws that to fulfill or follow, and which ones not to with that case law. That's why it was found unconstitutional, because they were abusing that loophole, which is now completely closed. And a lot of these state courts and everything else are still under the guise of that they're working under the Chevron doctrine. Sharon, I know you've got to go. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you back in a couple weeks, and I'll definitely be talking to you soon.
Well, I should hope so.
So, guys, thanks, Sharon. Thanks for having me again.
Night, everybody.
So, guys, good night. Guys, going back to the Chevron doctrine and everything else that's there, and I believe our fearless leader, I see him in the back room. What we're talking about is the psychological warfare here of our court systems too. Not just traumatic experiences such as war and the things of taking your kids, but of the court systems. And that's what we're seeing the awakening of, is the things that have been going on for over 40 years that they've been getting away with, that is now coming to light. And there's a lot of codes and statutes that are on your state books in every state that are completely unconstitutional. Either they didn't follow the proper procedure to check on, to make sure it was lawful and constitutionally sound, they could do it. We're seeing a lot of cities like Chicago and New York City that does this a lot, that they just pass these city ordinances and everything else, and they bypass the Constitution. And that's where, our administrator now is saying, no, that's not legal. We have to follow the Constitution. Every state's Constitution has a supremacy clause that says the Constitution is the ultimate law of the land. It's the only law. The other thing I'd like to get into, that you'll hear a lot of people say, especially in the state, you broke a law. Let's make this very clear. States cannot pass laws. They can pass codes and statutes. Congress is the only one empowered to make laws. Okay. A lot of times you will hear this misspoke by attorneys, by magistrates, administrative judges, this and that. You've broken this state law. And when you look at it, it's actually a code or a statute. It's not a law. And that's where they've been misleading you, even from the beginning. When you get into some of your cases and you deal with some of the things in the court systems, and that's where the psychological warfare is because they use a terminology called legalese, and it's not common language which is found in the federal court system. So which is why they tell you, if you don't know legalese or you don't know these particular things, you need to get an attorney because you don't know how to work within our court systems. But let's just put it this way. They don't have, there's no such thing when it comes down to it. And I'm going to put this up on the screen for you guys here and let you read it because this is federal. And look at this. And this has not been overturned ever. U.S. Supreme Court decision: all codes, rules, and regulations are for government authorities only, not human creators, in accordance with God's law. Now, what they're talking about is there's different levels of law. There's God's law, that's the highest, that goes down in through, trust law. And I think there's another one in between there. And then there's contract law. And our Constitution is actually contract law. And it says in here, all codes, rules, and regulations are what? Unconstitutional and lacking due process. So everything the state's doing, trying to enforce codes and statutes, this and that, the only thing the states were supposed to have power was over commercial law. In other words, business to business. That's where they made their profits, was off the businesses, not the people. Then we seen it go on to where they started getting property taxes and a few other things. It evolved. You can just go through the history. I want you to read, and this is Rodriguez versus Ray Donovan, U.S. Department of Labor, and it's 1985. This has not been overturned. And that's very clear that these lower inferior courts don't recognize this. You're supposed to be at the state court level a mediator, and no more than a mediator when it comes down to those particular things, to mediate those things. Now, they do have separate courts, such as criminal courts, to take the burden off the federal court. But once again, those lower courts are still subject to the rules of the Constitution, which are the federal courts. So when a lot of times we say, make sure you're fighting in the right courtroom, because constitutional rights, arguments or anything like that do not take place in your state courts. They take place in your federal courts, and only your federal courts. So you're fighting in the wrong court, or where you're filing or what you're doing. You can't argue a constitutional rights case and it be legal if it's not in a federal courtroom, because you're saying basically that my rights have been violated by the government or the government official and or representative, is what you're saying when you go to federal court. That's what they're not telling you. And a lot of your family attorneys, even though you have a constitutional rights violation, they're going to say, well, this court doesn't deal with this. And of course, he's not going to tell you. The reason that he's not going to tell you that is because he doesn't have a license, he or she doesn't have a license to go into federal court. So they can't even hold on to your case. And if you've talked to them and told them that, and they're not taking your case to federal court to take care of the constitutional issues first, because that has a superiority clause within your state's constitution to defer to that, saying if there's a constitutional issue in a case, you don't have jurisdiction from the very beginning. You entered my home illegally without a warrant or court order or emergency. You kidnapped my kids without those things. State court doesn't have jurisdiction. Federal court does, because your constitutional rights were violated. But they're going past that. That's what Trump's been talking about, is going past that constitutional threshold and saying we have jurisdiction and stealing your kids. That's what they've got. Things like that, or trickery into contract, because the only way that the state can involve you in anything is under contract law. So they want you to sign something. hey, agree to this, sign to this. And then the other little loophole that they don't catch or they catch you on is that when you sign that, you're giving over custody to your kids sometimes to the state or to somebody else. And in some states, that's actually a felony. So that's the form of entrapment they use. That's right. Sign it away over here because they think you're doing wrong. Guess what? You just caught a criminal case. And then all of a sudden, the CPS worker works with your district attorney's office and they give you a criminal case of child abandonment. And then the CPS attorney goes right back to the family court judge and says, Your Honor, we need custody. Why? Because they committed a felony that we coerced them into. They won't tell them that. But that is going on all over the place. Guys, we've got to, we love everything you guys take and do for us. We love having you guys here. Guys, thanks for watching. Hit the like and share button. Keep up with our show. Get the notifications. We love having you guys around. Mental health. Yes, it was tied to a bigger picture. But that's one of the beautiful things we do is try to make it relevant for you guys. So you understand what's going on in your world, because we don't want you to be kept in the dark. This is about giving you knowledge and information so you can be a well-educated citizen of this country, a resident of this country, and express and understand your freedoms as they are written. Hold on, guys. There's a lot more coming. Catch us again next week, and don't forget to check out our other shows on the CPS News Network. Every night we've generally got one or two shows going on. Guys, love to have you out there. Keep following with this. There's a little bit of everything. If you don't find it here, there's other topics if it's specific with foster care, or we have a show just on Maine. Guys, we'd love to hear from you. Like I said, my email, if you scroll back through, you need to get a hold of me or Sharon. It's there. Darren, I'm going to work with Darren, and we're going to try and get some closing stuff that has some of the information on there as far as, for the network, so we get some of that. Guys, our show's growing. For joining us. You guys have a great night, and don't forget, know your constitutional rights, stand on them, be firm, and don't ever give up hope, because eventually what goes around comes around. Thanks again, guys.
Shattered glass, together we stay, no more broken past. Faith and hope, never too far. Return our kids, make them the stars. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land.